Let's dive into the whimsical contradiction that is oxymorons. Now, it's in the name, guys. Oxy, just take that away for a second and you're left with moron. Yeah, it might seem a little bit moronic to have a literary device like an oxymoron, and we'll see why. My name's Gabs, and today we're going to be looking at oxymorons. This is lesson 10 out of 12 tutorials on literary devices, so I highly recommend you go and check the rest of them out if you haven't already. This tutorial will cover the definition of an oxymoron, we'll look at some examples, and then I am going to analyze an oxymoron exam style so you can see how to do it yourself. An oxymoron is when two contradictory words are placed beside one another. Why do we use oxymorons? Often, many objects, people, places we describe create contradictory sensations that can sometimes be a struggle to understand. Oxymorons capture this dichotomy perfectly. There's something foolishly wise in the pairing, and notice I used an oxymoron there, foolishly wise. I'm such a dork. Let's look at some examples. As we read these, really stick with your emotions. What comes up for you? I want you to come up with 2 to 3 descriptive words that catalyze or sum up this sentence. And really take your time with it. You know, if you have to pause the video, please do. This is a very short exercise that you should have time. If you're here, you know, looking at the video, go the whole hog. When I was a young warthog. And pause the video, really take your time coming up with these intuitive, descriptive words. It will be all worth it in the end. 1. The ending was bittersweet. 2. It got pretty ugly. 3. They were like the dead alive. 4. It was a silent cry. 5. A beautiful mess. I'm giving you one extra chance. Just stick with those emotions, stick with those descriptive words. And once you feel you have 2 to 3, let's check out what I got. So for the first one, the ending was bittersweet. It really encapsulates the idea of sweet and sour. We often think of transitions of our lives or endings as bittersweet, and we're going to unpack this quote further in the next slide, so we'll move on for now. Number 2, obviously, the word pretty is used to describe something as like aesthetically pleasing or beautiful, whereas ugly is the opposite of that. It's something that's kind of repulsive. For me, this phrase captures the violence and conflict of a situation. Number 3, they were like the dead alive. There's definitely something supernatural and threatening going on here, like the dead alive. It makes me think of businessmen and women on their way to work in the morning, where they're just kind of zombie-like and zonked out in their own world, either on their phones or just kind of staring into space. It feels like there's something supernatural and threatening, maybe a bit off-kilter. Number 4, it was a silent cry. I mean, a cry, it feels like it should be loud, right? It should be heard. But this one is silent, so there's an element of sorrow and helplessness being evoked here. And number 5, a beautiful mess. That feels surprising to me. It's almost like a spontaneous moment of bliss. So I'm going to take quote number 1 and I'm going to analyze it exam style. The writer uses the oxymoron bittersweet to describe how all endings can be both a relief and a loss. Bitterness is sharp and sometimes difficult to stomach, whereas sweetness is pleasurable. The writer implies that some aspects of the ending were difficult to endure, whereas other aspects were enjoyable. Things I did right. So I identify the literary device, it's an oxymoron. I pinpoint the quote, I say bittersweet is the oxymoron. And then I start to draw upon descriptive words, you know, relief and loss. I single out each word, I sort of pull the oxymoron apart and I focus on the bitterness first. So I'm saying bitterness is sharp and sometimes difficult to stomach. And then I focus on sweetness on its own, you know, but sweetness is pleasurable. And then I put them back together again for the conclusive statement, you know. The writer implies that some aspects of the ending were difficult to endure, whereas other aspects were enjoyable. Now, can you see what I did? It's super simple. You just need to break it down as easily as possible for yourself so that those ideas can be conveyed simply and effectively to the examiner. Some final thoughts. Remember, this is lesson 10 of 12 literary device lectures, so make sure you subscribe to get notified first about my next video. Thank you for sticking with it. If you want to get your hands on this deck, head to my Patreon. If you want to come and say hi between videos, shoot me a message on Instagram. And yeah, I think that's it. So well done for sticking with it, and I'll see you next time.